God, all that gold.
There was another shooting at an ICE facility in Texas yesterday.
Terrible.
Detainees were killed. The FBI director posted on social media bullets that were engraved with the message anti-ICE.
Right.
He just posted another thing on social media saying they recovered a handwritten note from the subject that read, "Hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof?" Who do you hold responsible for the uptick in left-wing violence in the country?
Radical left rhetoric. The radical left is causing the problem.
The radical left is not causing the problem. You have a few isolated individuals who, in many cases, are simply mentally ill, or they're just nuts. Nobody on the so-called left, the Democrats and progressives, no one is in a position of official capacity is arguing that violence in any way against ICE agents is legitimate. We're not suggesting that you go out there and you start assaulting ICE agents or you try to kill them or shoot at them and so forth. The weird thing about that ICE attack on their ICE facility is the individuals that were actually injured were the detainees, the people who were being held as illegal immigrants. It wasn't ICE agents that were actually shot. So regardless, the whole point is that he's arguing from anecdotes, and he's claiming that it's the left-wing radicals when the reports, and there's at least a half a dozen studies that have come out here recently, that indicate overwhelmingly that the domestic political violence is coming from the right-wing extremists, not from the left-wing extremists. So he doesn't quote any research. He doesn't quote any data. He doesn't try to support it with any evidence, big, giant surprise. He just makes it up. That's all he does. He just makes it up and says it's the left-wing radicals. He's arguing from anecdotes. He's arguing from example, which is basically what is called in the field of logic a hasty generalization, arguing from too few or atypical examples. So nobody's justifying on the left side of the political spectrum that we should have violence against ICE agents or detainee facilities. Nobody's arguing that. Nobody's really suggesting that that makes sense. At least those people are in official positions of power. And most people in the progressive movement and most people as Democrats are not suggesting that. It's just ludicrous that he's making this claim. But of course, he just makes the claim. It's an assertion without any evidence whatsoever to support it. And when you look at the actual legitimate, credible evidence, it shows exactly the opposite of what he's saying. Exactly the opposite. But he doesn't end up attacking the right-wing extremists and their violence. And in fact, interestingly, the 10,000 plus people who stormed the Capitol, and more than 1,500 of them went through court trials or were waiting for court trials, or actually pleaded guilty during the insurrection that we had in January 6, 2021, he pardoned all those people. So they were violent against the Capitol Police, but he never mentions that, and he doesn't actually discount it, he doesn't discredit it, because as far as he's concerned, and he had actually said this, that they're patriots. They're patriots. So bizarre, absolutely bizarre stuff that comes out of his mouth.
They're out of control. They're saying things, and they're really dumb people. I mean, I look at Crockett. I look at some of these people. They're very low IQ people, actually.
Okay, stop it. He loves to say that people are very low IQ. Interesting is that Representative Crockett has legal degrees. And when you hear Representative Crockett attack Trump, which she oftentimes does, she really does effective refutation and development of her arguments, and she supplies evidence to support that. So what he's really saying is that these people are low IQ because they're killing me. They're just absolutely rhetorically killing me. They're destroying everything that I say because everything I'm saying is pretty much ridiculous. So it's just an allegation. I mean, he thinks he's a brilliant, stable genius, and that's just absolutely embarrassing. It's embarrassing as an American. We're embarrassed in terms of the entire world. And I'm quite sure that virtually everybody in a position of power in all of Europe and countries across the world are thinking to themselves, without necessarily articulating it in public, that this guy is a doofus and he's an embarrassment to America.
Well, actually. But the radical left is causing this problem, not the right, the radical left. And it's going to get worse, and ultimately it's going to go back on them. I mean, bad things happen when they play these games. And I'll give you a little clue. The right is a lot tougher than the left. But the right's not doing this. They're not doing it, and they better not get them energized, because it won't be good for the left. And I don't want to see that happen either. I'm the president of all the people.
Okay, let's stop it there. He claims that it's not the right doing this violence, it's the left. Okay, so that discounts the member of the Minnesota legislature and her husband that were shot dead by a right-wing Trumpist in Minnesota. It also discounts the fact that Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked in their home by a MAGA individual, a person who was a Trump supporter, and he took a hammer to the head of Pelosi's husband and almost killed him. But according to Trump, the right wing never does any of this violence, but he does say that they're a lot tougher than the left. So what is that supposed to mean? What's the message that he's communicating there? That in cases of violence, the right wing is going to be the most violent? So he doesn't make his case. In fact, it's the exact opposite. But he just wants to ignore the massive amounts of violence that you see coming from the right. Again, as I mentioned, the people who attacked the Capitol Police and assaulted our Capitol in January 6th of 2021, he doesn't even mention that. And that was the right wing. That's all the right wing. So he's wrong.
The radical left is causing this. The radical left Democrats are causing this problem. And it gets worse. It gets worse. And it'll be a point where other people won't take it anymore. And that will not be good for the radical left. And we don't want that.
Okay, stop it.